might just start the program with what we heard from Michael Suker yesterday. This is in response to obviously a very early fire season and what sort of factor climate change is.
Pretty unseasonally hot weather in New South Wales and Queensland at the moment, and the prospect of fires on the south coast of New South Wales. Do you think climate change is a contributor to that?
I don't think so. I don't think you can say that climate change itself for any particular season, any particular event. Australia has always been a land of fires and flooding rains. That has been for time immemorial.
So, starting with you on this, David, it's true that you never say this one event, this heat wave is ever attributable to climate change, but given, we had earlier this year the hottest day on record overall, and now we're getting the next sort of blast of heat. Is this going to start wearing a bit thin for voters, that sort of logical reasoning, but one that sort of tries to push climate change to the side?
Well, everyone seems to measure these things based on their life experience, and voters these days think it's the hottest day on record or the hottest spring on record, or if it's unseasonably cold, it's all climate change. So whatever the case, we've had a lot of rain over the last 3 years. It's going to dry out, and I expect there's going to be a lot more warnings about the risk of fire danger going forward, and inevitably people will use that to say that the nation's in peril because of climate change. So whether there's a large body of evidence that shows that we're warming, and but whether you can tell that from an unseasonably hot period over the last 3 days.
The large body of evidence, I guess, is the trickier part, that you can sort of go, we'd never know what individual element is, but is that still what voters want to hear is the question?
Yeah, every time you have one of these things, it's obviously going to spark the debate, and that's going to feed into a variety of views, and that will mean that the climate debate kicks along, and alternate forms of power and so on, generation, are going to be with us for a long time, I suspect.
Eamonn, where do you sit on how this is playing out, I guess, in voter land more than anything else?
Well, look, I think in voter land, that verdict's in, isn't it? Happened at the last federal election. There's a bunch of people sitting in the parliament called the Teals. They basically had climate #1 on their agenda. Look at the electorates that they took. So regardless of what your position is, I think ultimately, just from a political perspective, this is on the agenda. People are worried about it, and they want action. Now, we can debate back and forth, in terms of the causes, but as you pointed out, Tom, the trend is right there. I think that is beyond doubt. It's beyond any argument. And we all know that one of the
things... But the Teals aren't the whole country, though, and that's sort of the other... Sure. There are seats out there that if you went too hard on climate, you'd lose them, wouldn't you? So is it... I guess, do you feel like the balance is sort of permanently shifted, or is it still cyclical, that the big concern on climate change? That big concern when it's happening, when it's not, people sort of forget about it and go, oh, what's happening with our power bills?
I think that opinion has shifted massively. Don't forget, I worked for Gillard and Rudd. I was there for the whole Whyalla thing. And the $100 leg of lamb, I don't think you can get away with that now. It's just people accept it as part of life. And the voter profile's moved, and as younger voters come in, they all accept that this is part of life, and we've got to get onto it.
Is that just ending on this briefly, David? Do you agree on? Yeah, I agree with Eamonn.
Happen if we chart it back over. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with Eamonn. We're over that Rubicon. That's gone. Both major parties have got policies to reduce emissions. The debate is really about how far and how fast. And as you see, played out in the papers today, how long we've got to move to a new form of power that is far more sustainable, and how quickly, and what the cost increase associated with that's going to be. So it's not that anyone's in the position of saying this is not happening. It's more the debate about how do we deal with it in a way that doesn't penalise consumers.
And is there a little bit of an issue there potentially for Labor, Eamonn, on not being totally agnostic? Nuclear doesn't seem to be the cheapest right now, but it might be. So if you're really going to shut it out, it might, cost either people or the climate. Is Labor too ideological on nuclear power?
I think Labor came to the election with a very, very clear plan, and it's out there. And surely you owe it to the electorate and you owe it to yourselves to put your plan in place first, which is exactly what they're doing. No one ever spooked nuclear back then. The cost is a huge unknown. Even the estimates now, 370 plus billion now, to move to the extent that some people are talking about, God knows where we would end up. There is a plan in place now that is underway. We are looking at renewables and getting as much of that shift underway as possible. And everywhere you see investment, not just government investment, but also private investment, is moving that way.
David, interested in your views on the No campaign, really talking a lot about the fact that crosses are not counted as a no. There's even a legal case today which has failed. Is this just, a lot of people just dip in and out of politics? Will there be people sort of picking up that a cross should mean no, therefore I'll do it, I'll show them, and this might be a bit of an own goal for the No campaign?
Yeah, I think the AEC's come out and said this is consistent with previous practices, right? I think what it shows is everyone's jockeying for position. No one's prepared to let the other side of the debate get what they perceive to be a win. Probably, well, I think it's going to be it's going to be a bigger indicator of where things go to get actually people out to vote, as opposed to whether they use a cross or whatever. And as long as it's clearly marked at the ballot box, you're probably not going to have a problem with that. But it sort of shows the jockeying that's been leading up to this. But the AEC's, I think, made it very clear, haven't they, that they're just going with previous practice at referenda and plebiscites.